Welcome to the History Slam podcast from ActiveHistory.ca. Here is your host, Sean Graham.
Thank you, Adam. Welcome to the History Slam, everybody. Coming at you today nearly live from Toronto, Ontario. We're on the campus of the University of Toronto, home of the Trying Real Hard Varsity Blues. And that's the only joke I'm going to make about the University of Toronto sports teams, because they're so easy to make fun of, but the people here have been very helpful in getting us a place to record today. So that's the only joke I'm going to make. We're here today where it's the start of the fall, and we're talking about books. In history, we publish a lot of books, we read a lot of books, and every few months, new season of publishing. So we're here with our publishing expert and my literary agent, Emily Harrington. Yeehaw, what up?
Oh, hey, what's going on?
Not much. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
And for anybody who thinks it's super pretentious for me to have a literary agent,
it is a bit.
So I figure you probably have to do something like literary before you get a literary agent. But it's like a preemptive representation thing.
I'm pretty sure I owe you one somewhere along the way. So
yeah, I think so.
You can have this.
Yeah, thank you. So this is our fall book preview. Now, let us go over really, really quick what the criteria is to be included in the fall book preview. I will stress that nobody has asked us to include their books on our list.
Not one.
And nobody has given us money. I will take money if somebody wants to offer it to me.
Or free books.
I'll take that too.
I appreciate a good free book.
Yeah, I won't talk about your book in return for doing that, but if you want to send me something,
I might.
And that's your last appearance on the podcast.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And other than that, the criteria is basically just stuff that we think looks cool, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So you have 5 books, I have 5 books, and we'll start with you. What's your first one?
Okay, this is from the Athabasca University Press, which publishes and prints outside of Edmonton. I love Alberta.
Bias.
I know. The first title is called The Wages of Relief, City and the Unemployed in Prairie Canada, 1929 to 39. The author is Eric Strickwerda, and he is a prof at the University of Alberta. This book is about labor and industrial relations, social and economic upheaval of the Depression. He focuses a lot on purely how different social climates were affected during the Depression and how Canada and the prairies really responded to that. This book is available as an ebook and in paperback, which is very rad, and it is out in December.
So we're talking. So it's a Depression era book on the prairies.
Yeah.
No, why'd you pick that?
Well, I thought it was kind of cool because I think when I think of the Depressions, I think of like the industrial big cities and stuff, and not what was happening out there. And so if you're at all interested in like the full scope of the Depression, then that's something that I would definitely introduce you to, because it seems like it's an important focus for you if you want to know more about Canada and the social aspects and the economical aspects, especially out in the West.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like it's a Dust Bowl book either.
No, it doesn't at all, actually. And even the cover looked super. And the cover has to get my eye. And it looked really fascinating, and not just like, here's an old dirty family, all dusty and crap.
Wow. Okay. So that's our first one, and it's interesting for someone like me who spends their whole time researching the 30s. So something new for someone like me. So I like that. So that's your first pick. My first pick is from U of T, and that may or may not be influenced by the fact that we're here today. Called Autonomous State: The Epic Struggle for a Canadian Car Industry from OPEC to Free Trade by Dimitri Anastakis, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
I have no idea.
Which I'm sure I'm not, and my apologies. And who's from Trent University. And this looks at the post-1970s car industry in Canada. Looks at things like the Chrysler bailout of 1980, the increase of Japanese imports, and the coming of free trade. And it's intriguing to me just because of the context the last few years with the auto bailouts, and our government is giving money to the car companies, and I think General Motors right now is having issues in Oshawa. They're closing their plants there, and there's lots of tension going on. So I think it's just a timely book, and it'll show how we got to this point. At least I hope that's what he does. Or I hope that's what it is. The only concern I may have with it, it's 512 pages.
That's big.
It's a long book.
That's a lot.
Hopefully it reads well. And it's a nice narrative. Because I think it's a good topic for this time.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's my first pick.
Sounds good.
Number 2.
My second pick also comes from Athabasca University Press in Edmonton, and it is called Provincial Solidarities, A History of the New Brunswick Federation of Labour. And it is written by David Frank. And
the New Brunswick Federation of Labour?
Yeah.
And it's published by Athabasca?
Yep.
Just clarifying.
They don't have any issues. They go coast to coast.
Good, hey, good on Athabasca. Man, hey, I love them.
Regardless, we digress. Anyway, and so David Frank is really cool, and I'll tell you why David Frank is really cool. Is because he is the former editor of the journal The Atlantic in the regional history section, and I love The Atlantic. It's really, really interesting. If you don't read The Atlantic and you love history, pick it up and read it. It's fantastic. And he is also a professor at the University of New Brunswick, and this book is, again, about labor studies, understanding the political, economic, and social development of the province. So if you are really into East Coast, New Brunswick politics and history, this is something that you should definitely pick up. It is also available in ebook and paperback, and this won't actually be available until January of the new year. But I recommend putting it on your Christmas list, and maybe you will get it in the new year.
There you go. Unless the Mayans are right.
Then don't worry.
Yeah. And I should say the book I mentioned, Autonomous State, is due out at the end of December. 3 days before New Year's. So that sounds good. And a little nice shout out to the East Coast.
Definitely, yeah. It's something like my book before about the prairies. It's something where, if you're really interested in East Coast stuff, then this is East Coast politics, East Coast economic and social lives, then pick it up.
Yeah, and I think it seems as though regional stuff is really popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
And just going through all these catalogs, people are writing more regional histories.
Definitely.
Which can be really instructive because, if you know the national story, then you delve into the regional peculiarities. So it's fun.
I think it's also really cool, especially just for Athabasca, to be putting out ebooks.
Yeah.
They're one of the few Canadian publishing that I'm seeing like nonfiction ebooks coming out, and especially with the rise of digital publishing, I think that that's something that should be explored in more depth. So, ebooks, super rad. Pick them up.
Yeah, it's good. For a university press to get into that now too.
Definitely, so textbooks become cheaper if everybody just goes digital.
Thank you, student. Contribution.
I'm not bitter.
So my second pick is a book called John Walker's Passage, which is by Daryl Verga, who is a filmmaker and an educator based in Halifax. And Walker is a filmmaker who did documentaries, and he did a documentary on Sir John Franklin's expedition, trying to find the Northwest Passage connecting the Atlantic and the Pacifics. So the book looks at that film, and it also gives the story of John Rae, who was the Scottish explorer who discovered the fate of Franklin and the final link to the passage, but he was left sort of out of the story. So Varga tries to situate the film within Canada's documentary past and show how the film can be viewed through the lens of Harold Innis's theory of community and culture. So whenever you can get Harold Innis in something, I'm all in.
Yep.
And I think it'd be nice to have it something that situates within the Canadian film industry and situates a historical event within the cultural past. And that's why I think it sounds to me like a nice mix of topics and something that would be unique, and it's not written by a historian either. So here's a guy, I'm assuming as a filmmaker, has sort of his pulse on the cultural side of things and can really integrate that well within the historical story. So I think that would be a nice mix, and it's relatively short.
Helpful.
Yeah, I think it's under 250. I think.
Oh, take it to the beach.
Yeah. Or
when does it come out?
It comes out. I didn't write that down.
Whenever it does come out.
Fail by me. It's out at some point. in the next 4 months.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Hopefully there's no delays. So that's my number 2 pick. And as a guy who studies the CBC and is generally concerned with Canadian culture, I think that's a nice work.
Yeah.
So, round 3.
My third pick comes from a small press here in Toronto called Between the Lines, or BTL Press. And this book, this title, I apologize if I butcher this first word, but it's a made-up word. Catastrophism, the Apocalyptic Politics of Collapse and Rebirth.
Well done.
Thank you. I tried really hard for that one. And there's a few contributors to this book. Sasha Lilly, host of Against the Grain. Very cool. David McNally, a prof at York University. And then 2 Americans. Eddie Ewan teaches urban studies at the San Francisco Art Institute, and James David is a filmmaker. This book it explores the politics of apocalypse, the left and right, the environmental movement from the capital and the state, and examines why the lens of catastrophe distorts our understanding of the dynamics at the heart of numerous disasters and fatally impedes our ability to transform the world. Which sounds like a mouthful, but because this is available in paperback at 192 pages, I think that it is quite a great read if you're on a train for a little bit of time or on a plane going somewhere.
Or even if it's edited. If it's an edited work, you can read sections individually.
Exactly. And so I think that it is, especially, it's out in October, so well before potentially disaster, according to the Mayans.
Yes, so you can read it.
So it's timely, and I think it's quite fascinating. I mean, I think apocalyptic anything, to me, is really, really interesting. So I recommend picking that up. I think it's probably awesome to read.
The one danger that could be there is that it could be seen as, depending on how it's written, sensationalist.
Totally. Oh, there is a good reason why it's coming out when it's coming out.
Yeah.
Like, the closer we get to December, the more people are going to be like, okay, like, this is over. But even if you don't think it's over, it's still something that maybe you should think about picking up and reading.
Yeah.
And if it is over, you're going to be glad you did.
What a good way to go out.
Yeah.
On a side note, for as much as we've talked about the apocalypse already in the first 13 minutes of the podcast.
It's a lot to talk about.
It really is.
Because we never talk about it.
No, we don't. Those people who made that movie really missed the boat.
I know.
Anyway, my third pick. Now, I know we're doing a preview, and this book's already been out for a couple months, but I read it and I really liked it.
Okay.
So this is why I'm going to talk about it. And I also wrote a review for it, which is going to be in Strata, which is the University of Ottawa Graduate History Student Review. So anybody who wants to read my extensive thoughts on this book can check that out. And it's called A Wilder West, Rodeo in Western Canada. And it's by Mary Ellen Kelm, who's from SFU. And she writes about the development of rodeos in Western Canada and shows the progress from small-scale local events to the professionalization of it to large-scale events. And she talks about how women were involved, natives, and the creation of this whole community surrounding rodeos. And it really showed how the typical things that you think about the West don't really apply, or how they were broken down in part through rodeos. Whereas when you think of rodeo, you think of guy on a bull trying not to get killed.
It's pretty much what I saw at the Stampede.
Yeah. But there's so much more going on that you just don't see. And so it was actually a really good read, and I really enjoyed it. And at 312 pages, was definitely manageable. I don't say this about a lot of people who work at universities. Really good writing, I thought.
That's good.
I thought it was really
high praise, considering how much you read in the last decade.
Yes. Well, yeah, because my field meetings was a lot of, this book was good, but the person can't write. And so to pick up academic books where people can actually, write, it's always a lot of fun.
Definitely.
So I would recommend that one, and even though it's already out and this is our preview, whatever. And that's from UBC Press, if I didn't mention that. Round 4.
My fourth book actually kind of falls off the rails as well. It doesn't really talk much about Canadian backgrounds. It's more what's going on in the world economically. So this is from House of Anansi in Toronto. And the title is called Has the European Experiment Failed? And the authors of this book are truly awesome.
So they didn't just write yes and that's it? It's a one-page book?
They probably could have, and I still would have agreed because of who they are. So Niall Ferguson, who I'll pick up anything Niall Ferguson has to say. He is a contributing editor at Financial Times and senior columnist at Newsweek. Daniel Cohen-Bendit, I think that's how I'm saying. I don't know. He is a French-born German politician. Joseph Geoff. I'm sorry if I apologize for your name.
I hope these guys never listen.
I really hope.
Man, oh man.
Senior fellow at Stanford University in their international studies, and Peter Meldenson, who actually is Lord.
Ooh,
Lord. I know.
Classy.
I'm getting royal up in here. Yep. And he was the EU Commissioner of Trade from 2004 to 2008. So there's definitely some big guns that are willing to weigh in on this topic. So this electrifying debate features some of Europe's most outspoken parliamentary figures and academics, and is guaranteed to be unforgettable and riveting verbal sparring match on the question that will determine the future of world's economy. Which I think is quite interesting because, you know, whatever's happening in Europe right now is going to affect every single one of us. So, as I think most of us already have figured out. And it is a good read at 112 pages. Again,
that's really short.
Something for you to, you know, just pick up, go, and, you know, travel with it. It's super light, paperback. It's, you know, really good. I think it'd be a really interesting read. And it is out November 2012.
Very nice.
Yeah. I know, I'm bringing royalty into the mix.
Wow, I'm stunned. I did not expect that.
I know.
Now,
I know. Lord.
Do they have a chapter on Greece? Did you look like...
The cover has the Greece
it's
flag
just
on
Greek?
it.
Oh, okay.
I believe that's true.
Do we know why Greece is so influential?
They do make the best cheese, I think, in the world.
All right.
Feta, come on.
So,
you can put feta on anything, and it's delicious.
Not anything.
Oh, come on.
A lot of stuff.
Okay, a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So all right. So that actually does another sort of timely book that at 112 pages definitely would be.
I know. Put in your back pocket.
Yeah, jeez. Now, my fourth book is not nearly as royal, but something that I'm looking forward to. It's called Jesse Owens, the Press, in the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games.
Ooh.
Being put out by Routledge, written by Pamela Lacello, and apologies if I mispronounced that. It's coming out January the 1st, and at 224 pages, another one that seems very manageable. Mm-hmm. Now, Pamela Lacello, this is from Indiana University. This is, I believe, our first American.
For you.
For me. My first American.
Yeah.
And the book looks at how the press lifted Jesse Owens at the Olympics to becoming one of the most celebrated athletes of the 20th century. He, of course, had that 4-medal performance in Berlin with Hitler looking on and just gritting his teeth the whole time.
Right.
And it also examines the differences between the regular or traditional press and the black and the communist press and how the coverage differed between those perspectives. And it looks at things like language and how that coverage and the language used at the time still influences how we think of Jesse Owens today. And I think Jesse Owens is a really interesting figure. You know, not only because of the context of being in Germany, winning the medals as a black man, but also representing the United States as a black man and being celebrated at a time where segregation was still very strong. Mm-hmm. So he's a really interesting figure to me. So looking at having another way to examine him and look at his life, I'm looking forward to reading that. And the Olympics are over, just finished. So,
what are you talking about? The Olympics just started.
Okay, we're posting this.
Oh.
After the Olympics. I was trying to make it sound like we're going to post it closer to when.
Sorry.
We're recording it than we actually are. The Olympics just finished.
I apologize.
The Olympics just finished like yesterday.
And they were good.
Canada with a solid performance.
Yeah. Super great. They got at least 2 medals. that I know of.
They didn't get shut out.
Nope. They definitely placed. And we are proud of them. All of the athletes.
Yes. And how about that Usain Bolt performance?
He is not Canadian, so who cares? Side note, though, awesome.
Oh, man.
All right, fifth.
We just got canceled.
Yep.
So, fifth round.
The Acorn Press outside of Charlottetown, PEI. This book is called Right Place, Right Time, Sydney, Heather, Boomer, and Me. And it is a different kind of nonfiction work. It is Bruce Rainey, who is the host of the CBC Prince Edward Island's Compass, the highest rated supper hour news program in Canada.
Also, used to do their curling coverage, I believe.
You would know all about that.
Yes, I would.
So, This book has collected stories from every news, political, and sports arena. He has worked closely with iconic figures like Ron MacLean, Don Cherry, and Peter Mansbridge, amongst others. The book will include entertaining and often hilarious reflections from these encounters, as well as many other anecdotes from his quarter century as a news and sports anchor. I know that the book is also endorsed by... Who is he endorsed by? I just told you, just before.
Rick Mercer.
Rick Mercer, yes. I apologize. I should know that name always. So it's always going to be a good time if Rick Mercer endorses a book. And special news about this book, all author proceeds will go to the PEI Cancer Treatment Center. So definitely pick it up. It's 168 pages. So it's still, pretty light, pretty easy to pick up. And it just came out actually in May. So it's out now. So pick it up and read it.
There you go. And I like Bruce Rainey. I do.
Yeah. Well, you like him because of the curling. At least.
Yes.
He's got a good foundation with you already.
That's right. That's a plus right there.
I know.
So, all right. That one sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's good.
All right. My fifth pick. Now, I will say this. I was concerned when I first saw this title because I've noticed that whenever a prominent individual dies, like 2 days later, there's 87 books on that person.
That's because there's some guy in his basement just like waiting.
Yeah. But it always seems so... It feels like they're exploiting the person who just died. And I thought when I saw the title that's what this book was. But in looking at it a little closely, that's not what it is. It's called Inside the NDP War Room. Inside the NDP War Room, Competing for Credibility in a Federal Election. It's by James McLean. And it looks at the 2005-6 campaign, so that election that was in January 2006, which was the first one the Conservatives won under Stephen Harper. So it looks at the nature of credibility in the communications game of campaigns, and it looks at how the NDP did this, all their communication staff and all their PR people, and how they worked on giving the party credibility and trying to build up. And then he tries to make these connections and show how this effort helped set the stage or set the framework for what happened in the last election, particularly in Quebec, with the NDP just going nuts and dominating Quebec. So it seems like a really interesting behind-the-scenes look, and so I guess this guy trailed the NDP throughout that campaign, and so you get the whole behind-the-scenes and what's going on, as opposed to the public persona of what the party's doing. You get to see behind the scenes why they're doing it and why they're making the decisions they're making. And in looking at the description, it reminds me of a Michael Lewis book called Trail Fever, which he did in 1996. It probably came out in 97. But he covered all the Republican candidates during the 1996 primary season who were going to go up against Bill Clinton. And that book is really good because he just talks about the drone of campaigns and essentially how boring all the candidates were. And he just went and found the guy who was in last place because the last place guy was going to say the most interesting thing because he kind of had to. And how Bob Dole was the least interesting person ever during that campaign.
Yeah, he kind of was.
Yeah. So, and that's a really good perspective, not just sort of behind the scenes what all the staffers are doing, but also, at least for Michael Lewis, he was a reporter and seeing the drain or the stress or just everything that goes along with covering these things. So my excitement for this book is at least partly based on reading that book. And I think it'll do well just because, not because Jack Layton died, but there's still that interest in him, and
Definitely.
people are still trying to understand how he did what he did in the last election. And if this book sort of goes back and says it wasn't just a one election thing, it was a progression, and he had a clear plan, that sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, that does.
So those are our 10 books. You have one left?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it looked like you had one left.
I do, but I'm not a good... No.
No, go.
No. Okay. This one? You want me to do this one?
Yeah, oh yeah, this is the best one. I can't believe I forgot this one. This one's going to be great. Well, okay, I shouldn't say it's the best one. It has the most interesting title.
So this comes from Hancock House outside of Surrey, BC, and the title of this book is called Sasquatch in British Columbia: a chronology of incidents and important events. And it is by Christopher L. Murphy. And I would have loved to have gotten some background on Mr. Murphy, but sadly I couldn't find any. But I really, really wanted to know more about this man who seems to know quite a lot about the Sasquatch in British Columbia. A complete reference on Sasquatch in BC, from fossilized footprints to modern-day sightings and current scientific research. This fantastic book is in paperback. It has 300 plus photos and a whopping 524 pages. So...
But if those are all like one-page photos, there's got to be 200 pages of just photo, right?
Who cares? If you are at all interested in anything historical that is a little odd, a little different, then this might be for you. I also couldn't find when it was released, but I do know that it came out in 2012. So I believe it is on the shelves or it is online. I'm sure you could pick it up if you or somebody you know really enjoys Sasquatch historical facts. I think it's going to be a good time.
I think it would end for as much as we laughed about this. There's a legitimate
there is a movement.
Yes.
There is a movement. Like people believe.
People believe in this
and
stuff.
I want to support those people that believe, which is why it made my list.
Yeah,
and it's coming out of BC.
And perhaps even it could be an archaeological study of these things.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about footprints and stuff.
Fossilized footprints.
Like it doesn't sound like it's just some kook being like, there's a 14-foot bear man walking through the woods. Here's a grainy photo. It sounds like a legitimate study to me.
I think it is. I think it would be a fascinating read.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
Now, so those are our books. If you have any suggestions for us, not that we're going to do another one of these until the next season, but if you have any suggestions or comments, you can just email the podcast, and I'll give out the email address at the end. Now, generally speaking, Emily, before we go, do you have any criteria that you look for in a book, a history book? Something that, not necessarily in that while you're reading it, but something that will make you want to pick it up?
Well, I'm always a big fan of covers.
Yeah.
Of course, like any genre of book, like the cover has to have something going on. Mm-hmm. I also really enjoy chapter titles. Oh. I think the more creative they are, or if they can at least explain things well, then that makes me want to read it and dive in. If it doesn't have creative or at least interesting chapter names, then I'm moving on. So I definitely think those are big things for me that I look for.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say I put you in charge of history.
Perfect.
As a discipline, you're in charge.
Perfect.
The first subject that you want a book written on is what?
Well, my favorite parts of history are Cold War history. I can read that forever. So for me, I think although there have already been multiple titles in Cold War or literature, I think that a new spin on that somehow would be really cool. I don't know. I feel like most spins have already been done in the Cold War. So, but any kind of new, fascinating, like little snippet in history that somebody has missed or somebody else has exploited. I also enjoy scandals during that time, like political scandals. So anything like that sometimes it can be just a little too hyped, but that's the kind of reading that I really enjoy. Kind of behind the scenes, like what the public got versus what the, so that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy.
I'm a little disappointed that you didn't say CBC 1936 to 1939.
I knew you were going to bring it up. I didn't want to steal your thunder.
What kind of agent are you?
Well, I mean, I'm waiting until, I need to see a little bit more.
Or something. How about something? Let's just see if I can produce something.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that because I knew you were going to speak about it. So I decided to speak about a different time.
All right.
Because that's what it's about for me. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think if I had to pick one that's not mine, because obviously I would probably pick mine because I'm selfish like that.
Well, and that's all you really talk about
all
day, every day.
Pretty much. That, curling, and baseball. That's it.
All the time.
Yeah. If I don't have anything else, that's it. I'm done.
Heaven forbid I ask you about a television show. You have no idea.
No, I have no idea. Although I have ideas of 90s TV.
I know, and they're good ideas.
I could talk your ear off about 90s television.
I know.
Culturally, I haven't gotten past 2001.
That's all right.
I don't think.
There's not a whole lot going on.
No, maybe 2003. Maybe when I graduated high school. I think I might have still known stuff when I graduated high school, and then that's it. I think. But anyway,
it's an odd time to switch off.
Yeah, it really is. But when I'm done grad school, then maybe I can switch back in. And
That'd be nice.
I think of all this stuff. I'll have so much that I can catch up on.
You'll be so far behind.
But I'll have so much. I've gotten to the point where, even shows that I still pay attention to, I don't watch regular TV shows. I wait until the season's done, and then I just binge consume the season in 3 days.
I think other people do that too. I did that with Lost.
Yeah, but now I can do that with everything from the past 10 years. All these great shows. I can watch the whole Sopranos.
This is a digression.
It really is.
For what we're doing.
It really is, but it's kind of history. My pick on a book, though, for one thing that I would like to read, and if something has already been published, that'd be dynamite. I would love to read a real good history of boxing, like in the 20th century or even to today. A really nice show of how it went from these back alley bare knuckle fights to being legitimized, and then the importance of the main players, the Dempsey-Tunney fight in 1926 and the other one in 1927. The importance of those fights, and then get into people like Ali and sort of the glory days of boxing, and then sort of the downfall in the 90s through today to where it's really now almost a fringe sport. I'd really like to see that and see if it can be connected to the rest of our culture, and if there's other reasons other than just the general assumption that a lot of boxing is kind of corrupt and that. But so if there's something more cultural about it, especially today with all the attention on headshots and concussions and all this and all the other sports, that if that's part of the decline of boxing as a popular sport. So that's what I would like to see.
That sounds good.
So maybe if no one writes it, that'll be next.
That'll be next?
Yeah. Well, because Jonah Carey stole my Expos idea. I was going to write a history of the Expos as my PhD thesis, and then Jonah Carey's writing a book on the Expos. And Jonah Carey is roughly 1,000 times better than me.
Well, then I don't know what to tell you. You're going to have to pick something else.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. This is great.
Good. So, anybody has any comments, questions about the podcast or about this, the email for the podcast is historyslam@gmail.com. So you can hit me up there. You can follow me on Twitter, which I am using, @Dr. Shawnee Fever is the name. So you can follow me there. And to everyone out there, if you're out tonight and you see Enrico Palazzo, please say hi for me.
Thanks for listening to the History Slam podcast. Check out ActiveHistory.ca for more features and articles, and be sure to subscribe on iTunes.